Welcome back to the Pathfinders podcast. I'm your host, Pete Schramm, founder and CEO of Latitude, and we are not here to talk about Latitude today. We're here to talk about the Pathfinders methodology in action. People talking about their career map and their personal board of advisors, the where they want to go, where they've been, and who has helped guide them along the way. Just a quick reminder, the career map has 5 dimensions to it, not just the jobs and positions like we see on some career maps, if people have them, but also the skills, the achievements, the education, and some of the fun stuff along the way. And then once we have that little bit of a map, isn't it super helpful whenever we can share some kind of a plan or an idea with others whenever we're on an adventure, especially this adventure of life. So that's where those multiple guides and mentors come along with the personal board of advisors. This will be posted on LinkedIn, Apple, YouTube, and Spotify. So please comment along the way. And I believe I'm supposed to say, follow and subscribe as we want to keep growing and helping more and more folks. So please comment and share your thoughts as you hear something that really stands out to you. Got a rock star coming onto the show today. Favorite quote, "There is room for all of us." Agree. Amen. Cindy Gordon, Chief People Officer at Madison Energy Infrastructure. Congrats. Couple of months into the role. Happy to have you here talking about the excitement over there. She's responsible for building and leading the company's people function across talent, performance, total rewards, and culture. The first Chief People Officer at Madison, she's focused on building scalable people systems and practices that empower employees to perform at their best. Yes, yes, yes. Can't wait to hear more as it keeps going. Maybe Cindy will have to bring you on for a follow-up, see how it's been after a couple of years. She brings over 2 decades of experience in the people function. Prior to Madison, she ran her own consulting practice, advising startups, navigating growth and transformation. She's previously served as the Chief People Officer at Policygenius, head of people at Oscar Health. Earlier on in her career, she held a range of people-focused roles at McKinsey and Company. She helped shape and support talent and organizational initiatives. So all the stuff that we're talking about, she knows it. She's been there, done that. I guess she could probably write the book on it as well. Blends deep operational expertise with human-centered approach to leadership and culture. And yes, she does have time for a life outside of work. Based in New York City, has bounced around the country. She loves to travel, staying active, and spending time with Bert, who is her senior Yorkie poo. Fun fact, you know how we do this. Cindy is on a quest. Continue. I don't think she's found the best, but she's looking for the best chocolate chip cookies, croissants, and Neapolitan pizza around the globe. We'll see if they get you onto, Barstool Pizza search and see how they're doing for a cross check. But Cindy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Of course. So we got to ask first, we did a little bit of this in the green room and over our previous conversations, priorities, right? Food. If people are going to look for, best croissant, best pizza, best chocolate chip cookie, what are some of the ones at the top of your list? Just so that you can help, maybe they're novices, but let's point them in the right direction from the beginning, right?
I appreciate that. And I will say that this is an evolving and iterative living list, but right now at the top of mind for chocolate chip cookie in New York City, it is Yanni's. It's a small little coffee shop in the West Village, Chelsea area.
Okay.
And they have the best cookies. They remind you of what maybe grandma would make, and they're always warm, and they always have a supply of them. So I highly recommend their chocolate chip cookie. The croissant, it's a tie between, and I'm keeping all of this in the New York area for right now, but the tie between Bien Qui, which is a bakery in Brooklyn, and I think they have a little outpost at Grand Central Market. They have a really good croissant. And then I do like La Cabra, and I think that's a very popular one these days, and they have 2 locations in New York, one in the East Village, one in Soho. And then Neapolitan pizza, right now, it's Macaletta in Williamsburg. And there's another restaurant, I think, in Queens that they have. But that's my favorite, and I think it's a controversial opinion.
I bet it is. We're not going to go into that today. We're here to talk about you and your journey and kind of how we can help guide others as a way of thinking about this. First question we ask on this show, Cindy, is what did you want to be whenever you were growing up? Was it indeed a chef? Was it a person who's cooking up solutions for people problems inside of organizations? Was it a world traveler? Talk to us.
Yeah, one would think that it would be that, but I'm going to share with you 3 different professions that I thought I wanted to pursue. One was a dump truck driver.
Yeah.
Another one was a fashion designer, and another one was a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
And if that's not representative of how my mind works, then I don't know what is. And I think the dump truck driver, I used to see one driving around my neighborhood, and it was carrying all this dirt. And I loved being outside and rolling around in the dirt and playing in the dirt. And I think that really upset my parents too, because I'd track the dirt throughout the home. So there's something about that. Maybe it's also just being a deviant that made me want to do that. And then pro wrestler, I'd watch it on TV, and there's just something there's some gravitas and seeing the wrestlers on stage. Some of them weren't very big. A lot of them were big, but their presence overall, they just represented themselves and took up space, and they overpowered others, and there's drama around it. And I just love the idea, which you can't see over this video. I'm sub 5 feet tall. And I think I always dreamt that, if I was in a setting where I had to fight somebody, that I could overtake them. And so maybe there's this secret pro wrestler that lives inside of me that's waiting to come out. And then the fashion designer, I've always loved fashion. And again, because of my small stature growing up, I figured out how I could fit into adult looking clothes by making my own. And that became a passion of mine and expressing myself. So I'll leave it to you to figure out a common thread amongst the 3.
Yeah, I think some of it will come as we go through the show today. Quick kind of fun piece weaving some of those together. Last night I went to the Pat McAfee show. He came to Pittsburgh, and some of my friends were at it, and they said, "Hey, we got a ticket for you." I had no idea what to expect. WWE was putting it all on. There was sumo wrestling. There was country singers. Snoop Dogg, Wiz Khalifa were there. Jelly Roll was there. I'm like, what in the world is happening? They played something that looked like Plinko, but it definitely was not Plinko. Outfits that people had on, maybe they were, fashion designed, but there was no dump truck. That would have been the cool piece that he could have brought to it, right? So that you're looking good. You have the wrestling aspect of things, but he missed that third piece from those childhood dreams there, Cindy. You talked about how we got to McKinsey, but what'd you study in school in order to get into that professional step? And as you're talking through us about what you studied, maybe talk a little bit about some of the most helpful experiences, stuff that stayed in your toolbox during those formative college years.
And we'll be following a bit of a theme here because it is equally as haphazard what I studied in college. When I went to school, I started out in fashion merchandising. I just thought, you know what, I want to go into the fashion world, and merchandising seems like an exciting place to be. They did away with that major my first semester, so I had to choose another one. And so then I jumped over to psychology. Seems like a natural transition.
Yeah, of course.
Over time, I started to pick up 2 minors. One was zoology and the other one was nutrition. And at the time, I really felt a little bit lost. I didn't know what direction I was heading. But then looking back, I realized that I either wanted to be a doctor, a nutritionist, or a dietitian, or a psychologist. And all of those professions are coaching others through something or helping others tap into things that they don't know about themselves. And I would be steeped in that subject matter expertise and help guide somebody through and navigate. And I think that's the common thread there. But at the time, I was quite lost and I didn't know what I was pursuing. I would say my learning is I wouldn't change any of that.
Yeah.
I think giving myself that space to organically pursue what was of interest to me was even more important than having a fully mapped out path for myself, where I'm actually missing the whole point, which is experiencing the journey and learning along the way. It would have just been a race to point B. So I'm very thankful that they did away with my major that first semester.
They probably did that for you. Let's be honest, because hey, let's face it. Whenever we think about the nutrition side of things, we have to feed goodness in and create good environments and guide our people in the workplace, right? So I'm seeing a little bit of a tie here with this one. And also, people can act like animals, right? And we have to figure out, hey, everybody's a little bit different, and there is some chaos, and sometimes we have to take a different approach to things whenever it comes to the workplace. So thanks for sharing that one. All right, let's go into the role at McKinsey. You did a lot of cool things. You had a big impact there. And I think it's one of those ones where it's tough to get in, but it's tougher to make that decision to leave. Let's not talk about departure yet. We'll get into that one. But talk to us a little bit about kind of your experience there. Let's talk about the point whenever you put together a little bit of a map saying, hey, this HR kind of sort of world, this talent space is kind of interesting to me. Where could I or should I go? And then the guides in the first role.
Mm-hmm. So I was at McKinsey for almost 15 years, and it was certainly not how long I expected to stay there. I thought it would be a quick 5-year stint, and then I'd move on and explore. And I fell into the opportunity at McKinsey, which started out in an HR and benefits role in a haphazard way. Again, I moved to New York without a job, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I'd work in philanthropy, and again, I thought maybe I'd work in fashion. I was pursuing those roles in my first job.
There's still a chance. There is still a chance. How do we dress up those chocolate chip cookies? Right? There is opportunity in these.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'll hold out hope. So when I pursued those opportunities, the first job offer I got was, I think, $19,000. And this was way back in the day. I'm dating myself, but it still wasn't enough to allow me to live in New York City. So I decided I would pursue a bigger girl job and something that gave me an ample paycheck to afford an apartment. And so I went through a staffing agency, and I landed this interview in benefits and HR at McKinsey and got the role, started, and I realized, oh, HR, this is exciting. I can work with people. I like that idea. I am an extrovert, and I still feel like I can help people navigate their way through the HR side of things. So I did that for 5 years and learned a lot about just working on a team and being process oriented and some of the nuts and bolts of HR. And then one of my team members had moved over to a recruiting team for the New York office. I was working in the back office at the time. And it was intriguing to me to see that she was going to be focused on bringing in great talent to the company. So there were a bunch of roles open, and I followed her over about a month later, joined the recruiting team for the Northeast office at the time, sitting in New York, and grew pretty quickly into a lead role within the recruiting team. And I worked very closely with some consultants who were the ambassadors for different schools, and the people I hired into the company I stayed pretty close with. And I was their first touch point in many senses. And so we stay in touch on their journey at the company and talk through careers. And an opportunity opened up on the professional development team, which helped all the consultants navigate their careers. And somebody was going on maternity leave, and I seized the opportunity to throw my name in the ring. There wasn't even a ring. I just saw an opening, and I asked the director who was running both of our groups at the time on recruiting and in professional development if I could cover in that role. And so I got the opportunity. I went out on a limb and asked. I was nervous to do that, but I got it and fell in love with the professional development team. And that started my career in professional development. So then I was there for 5 years. So it was 5-year stints, HR benefits, recruiting, and then professional development. And I learned so much from being on that team and coaching people through their own journeys, which helped me then reflect on my own journey. And McKinsey has this saying, make your own McKinsey. And I feel like I did seize that opportunity to make my own McKinsey and seeking out roles that seemed intriguing to me. After 15 years, that was, I guess I had exhausted my opportunities there to explore what I wanted to explore.
You built your own McKinsey, you worked at your own McKinsey, grew in it, and then graduated from it to then learn what else to do. And I think some of the MBBs and others, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, they'll even now do a little bit of a sabbatical, right? And they'll encourage people to, hey, go work somewhere else for a couple of years and then come back, right? Go get your education and then come back. And I think that is such a cool opportunity. At what point, Cindy, did you put together a little bit of a map, whether it was in your head or on paper, as you're talking to these individuals or not? Maybe it was at McKinsey, maybe it was later on, but you said, okay, this HR kind of sort of world is of interest to me. I think I could see me stepping a couple of paces forward and up and around in this world. I should probably look at doing this and then this and then this so that I can ultimately get to this kind of sort of role at the I'm not going to say the role at the end of the tunnel, right? The light at the end of the tunnel. But at what point did you start to piece together some of those milestones and stepping stones?
As evidenced by the history of what I've already shared with you, I'm very much okay, I'm going to look in front of me and see what's of interest to me and then pursue that. So I don't think I ever had, and I still don't have this long-term line of sight. I think I do know at the heart of it all that I want to continue to learn and I want to continue to help others navigate their situations. So I know those things are true, and whatever way the river flows and opens up opportunity is great for me. So when I was at McKinsey, I did start to have role models, right? And I saw them doing things and I was like, oh, I'm interested in what they're doing, or I want to learn more about that and I want to experience that. So let me try that. And I think the hardest thing for me was asking if there was a spot for me to be able to do that. That felt like a big risk at the time. I did when I was on the professional development team, I think I found my first true mentor who wasn't just a manager managing my output, but was somebody who was truly invested in who I was as a person and making sure that whatever my personal values were, that they were aligned with what role I was in or the values of the company itself or the team itself.
Did you find them or did they find you?
She was my manager. So I think that's rare that a mentor is also a manager, and to strike that balance, I think it requires a lot of, it requires relational intelligence. And she had honed that. She was also a coach. So I think she understood how to strike that balance. And I think as an employee, I also knew what my role was. I was very aware, like, okay, this is my manager. And this manager is responsible for assessing my performance. So I know where the boundaries are, but also the fact that she took time to get to know me. It also felt like I was working with a friend. And I think that helped me want to perform even more. And seeing her do that and lead with vulnerability. I remember one time she was dressed to the nines. We were corporate casual, but she was in a business formal outfit. And he's like, oh, what are you doing today? And she's like, I'm interviewing. And I thought that felt like such a taboo thing to talk about. You're interviewing outside of the firm and you're telling me about it as my boss. And she's like, I think it's really important and I encourage everyone to do this, to validate why they're in their role or invalidate while they're in their role and understand the value that they bring. And that was an unlock for me. And I think it allowed me to be more vulnerable around her. And to this day, we're not in touch as much, but I know when I do see her that we will still have those enriching conversations, even though we're not in a direct reporting line and on the same team anymore.
Very cool. So at some point, you said, "Hey, I did my 3 sets of 5 at McKinsey. Where am I going to take my talents and do reps other places?" So was this more of a you started looking, somebody tapped you on the shoulder? I can imagine that your network is growing quite extensively. So how did that happen? And at what point did you start getting involved with other groups or conferences or events? Because that can help with some of that proactive networking as well. And that's something that I think, folks earlier on in their career and, definitely in school, we don't really think about networking proactively. We look at it as, all right, I'm going to go do this because somebody drugged me along, or we're going to do this because now I need to get a job. But thinking about transition piece, and then as outside of work networking
Mhm.
became more of a habit.
So it was a pretty passive jump from McKinsey. I knew that I had exhausted the opportunities at McKinsey based
Yeah.
on my interest areas, and I knew it was time after 15 years to branch out. And so I had that in the back of my mind, but I was slowly in market having interviews here and there, but I wasn't proactively launching a search. And a former colleague that I worked with at McKinsey had moved on to be an advisor for this healthcare startup and had reached out about 8 months after he left and said, "Hey, we're looking for a head of people if you know of anyone or if you'd be interested." And I said, "I'd be interested." And I read the job spec and it spoke to the pieces of
Yeah.
experience that I had built up at McKinsey, but it was all in one. He was like, "This is a great application of my experience. I think I'm throwing my name in the hat." And then I interviewed with 15% of the people at the company, and
Woo!
they all asked the same questions. And I knew that I could add some value there. And that was at Oscar. I think jumping in at Oscar, that was my first head of people role. And it's interesting because the smallest thing had a lot of impact. For example, putting candidate interview invites in people's calendars. They thought that was like this huge, oh my gosh, this is groundbreaking. And I realized, oh, impact at a small, like, growing startup where we're building everything while we're building the plane while trying to fly it
Oh yeah.
versus a large institution that has all the infrastructure in place. Impact is
And
way
maybe done
different.
wrong, right? That's the
Yes.
thing. Just because
Yeah.
it's in place, it might be in place the wrong way.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
found that not all process and structure
Right.
is created equal.
You kind of need to like take a lens, and I'm doing that in my current role too, just
Yeah.
flipping things on their head. But when I joined Oscar, I felt overwhelmed. It was my first head of people role, and I quickly realized, oh, there's nobody here like my last supervisor or boss at McKinsey coaching me through. I'm the leader of my function. I actually have to pave the way here. What does my professional development look like now that I'm an operator and I'm not a
Yeah.
part of a team of people in similar roles? And so I there was the professional development team at McKinsey. We all wound up branching out, and a lot of us became heads of people at startups or heads of people at smaller private companies. And so we kind of transitioned as peers within the same company to being network peers across other companies, and still sharing insights and benchmarking. And from there, branched out, building even more of a network of people who were aligned with the ways that we were thinking about running our people functions at companies,
Yep.
but people bringing in different perspectives. And so we built a little network and
A
started bringing
cohort of
people in.
sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and there was so much learning because people were at different phases of their operating life cycles. And so there were some people who are 6, 12, 18 months ahead of me, and I was taking their learnings. And then as we continued to meet, we were bringing in people who are newer to their roles. And I think
Fresh
that,
meat. Yeah.
yes, fresh meat, sure, that validated for me, oh, I do know some things, because I think when
Right.
you're in the trenches and you're just building and doing the things, you don't lift your head up and realize that you know anything, and you constantly want to make sure that you're connecting with others to learn from them. But then you realize, oh, I do know something, by bringing in fresher meat because you're older meat.
I think that's really important for that reflection and ideation. And sometimes you just need people that are outside of your day to day to talk.
Hmm.
So I think that's a big piece. Cindy, we're going to get ready to wind down over here, but before we do, I want to touch on kind of that jump to consulting.
Hmm.
So you've done a lot of really remarkable things. Your resume is impressive beyond all get out. But the consulting, oddly enough, didn't go into dump truck driving or fashion or pro wrestling, from what I can see. Maybe there was, some secret projects in there. But at what point did you say, "Hey, I'm going to set up my own shingle"? I don't really like that term, but that's the term that people use, right? But at what point did you say it's time for me to do some of the consulting stuff on my own?
I went from Oscar and then to the next startup, Policygenius. So in aggregate, it was about 7 years back to back with no time off in between of
Hmm.
hyper growth at both of them. And so I was tired. And so around COVID, I realized I wasn't even able to show up for myself at work, let alone for my team. And I could always show up for my team. And that was a flag for me that I
Yeah.
needed to take some time. So I was burnout. And so I stepped away from my operating role and took some time off. And then organically, as I had built up my network, I always loved meeting people. So,
Yeah.
if I had a piece of advice, if people are reaching out to you, even if they're looking to fill a role and you're not in market, take those calls. You never know what it could turn into. If anything, you're building an additional person to your network who you can stay in touch with and learn from. And so I always took calls to meet people. I loved expanding my network and seeing what was out there as per the advice of my mentor at McKinsey. And somebody reached out and asked if I was taking on consulting work. And I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but I was like, why not? So I took on a part-time gig doing some consulting work as they were looking for a chief people officer. And that was really meaningful work. And I knew I could focus on areas that I was most passionate about and help
Yeah.
these companies. And then it grew legs from there. More network members knew I had left my operating role and that I was consulting. And I was able to do that for 4 years through the organic network that I had built. I thought I might do that forever. And then surprise, I joined in an operating role a few months ago at a new company at Madison Energy Infrastructure. And again, I'm just following this organic path. But I think for the consulting work, it really lived the purpose that I needed it to live. I was able to build confidence being hired for my expertise. Yep. And heal over from burnout by being able to drive my own schedule. But what I missed after 4 years of doing it was being a part of business challenges that were greater than my subject matter expertise and greater than self. And I missed being a part of a team. And so that's, that was my decision to organically explore opportunities that crossed my path. And here I am at Madison now. So I think that was an organic, and that fits the theme here of just following what I want to learn or I want to experience in any given time, and not ignore that or think, oh, I'm on this path. And if I leave this path, does that make me less than, or does that make me seem like I can't be trustworthy, or, not following anything that seems steadfast and sound. So all those ego-based things can enter into the mind and make us question.
Head trash. We call that head trash. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So, here I am. So the consulting work was fantastic. I think there are definitely pros and cons based on what somebody wants to get out of that. Mm-hmm. But I'm always happy to share if people want to reach out what my experience was and if it feels like the right path for them.
So reach out to Cindy, everybody. Yeah. I'm going to get ready and do a quick recap here. I took a couple of notes, but the last question I'll ask you, Cindy, is you talked about helping others put together a bit of a map, right? You've had a couple of guides and mentors along the way. Talk to us. You're the organization, right? Where do you see the value of each of our employees having a career map and having multiple mentors that they're interacting with on a consistent basis? How's that help a company?
Yeah, I think it's, if we go at something on our own, it can be a very slow process. We live in an echo chamber, and our human bias is negative. And so we end up negotiating with ourselves our own journeys unless we bring others in to serve as mirrors for us. And so I think there's some beauty. There's a lot of beauty in bringing in others. And I think sometimes the barrier to entry there is feeling like it's a failure to ask for help or to bring in others, or we're afraid to show our vulnerable side because we don't have a direction. And I would say like that is false. It's like squashing those preconceived notions and just asking for input and help can lead to so much learning. And we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're not the first humans on Earth. We're not the first generations. There's a lot that we can learn from others and their experiences while still maintaining grounding in our own experience, and that we are truly the architects of our own journeys. I think that's really important. We can take in information. I think that can help to inform us. But at the end of the day, we can do whatever we want. And creating space for that and generating ideas through others and support through others and validating and invalidating what's going through our heads is super important. And I can always tell this when I'm coaching somebody, if we're doing a catch up and they're going on this long-winded stream of consciousness, I can tell they've internalized things for too long and they haven't brought in somebody else. So that's a good check.
I think it's a necessary piece. As you're going through that, I may have weaved the needle through the story. We'll see. Let's try it out. So, Cindy Gordon, thank you very much for joining us here today. The first round draft pick for the chocolate chip cookies, Yanni's in West Village. The croissant is a tie between Ben Acqui and La Cabra. Neapolitan pizza is Macaletta. Outside of food, you wanted to be a dump truck driver, pro wrestler, and a fashion designer. We call that the triple threat, says nobody. The dreams were there, but you didn't want to settle for a single path. Haphazardly started school into fashion merchandising, and they were so kind to guide you out of that by canceling the program. You transitioned to not just one, but a couple of things per Cindy style. Psych, with areas in nutrition and zoology. You were given the space to organically pursue what was interest to you. Welcome to McKinsey for 3 times 5, 15 years, HR and benefits, recruiting team, and then keeping an eye out for interesting opportunities and asking got you into professional development. You coached and guided others, and that helped you coach and guide yourself. You talked about some of your career map and PBA Rev 1 from role models. And I think that's an important piece for us to all think about is maybe I don't know exactly what that career map should look like, but think about the who and what they're doing. And that might be a good place to start. Manager to mentor successfully showed you how professional vulnerability and even this wild idea of interviewing while in a role helps you validate a lot. I think it's nuts, but I think it's something to think about, right? You pulled out and forward by previous contacts, right? That's how you got over to Oscar Health as the head of people. And the small wins created big impacts that built the trust and ultimately growth. You talked to us about proactively networking and connecting, which gives an opportunity for reflection. Take the time to take those calls. Keep growing your network. And you gave us the reminder to battle burnout before it beats you down from your best. Consulting for 4 years now at Madison, you bring others to serve as mirrors, and you've become this metaphorical dump truck driver taking out the head trash, wrestling with tough decisions and people to design eloquent processes and people flows. So check out Bert and Cindy at a shop near you in New York City or around town.
Wow. Yeah, you successfully wove that needle.
Thank you for joining us, Cindy.
Thank you.